In the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, the strongest storm to hit the island in almost 40 years, countless stories of survival are emerging from across the nation. But one story in particular has captured hearts across the island. The unlikely rescue and even more unlikely romance between a Kingston businesswoman and the man everyone once called Mad. This is The Madman Who Saved Me. On Sunday afternoon, while the rest of Kingston was securing homes and seeking shelter, 34-year-old Simone Daly, managing director of a small logistics firm in Halfway Tree, was making one last delivery run for her company. Her family told her to stay put. She thought she could make it home before the storm reached the city. She was wrong. By the time Simone reached the intersection near Marcus Garvey Drive, the water had already started rising. Her silver SUV stalled in the middle of the flooded roadway. Within minutes, the flood was up to the headlights. She tried to open her door. It wouldn't budge. She pressed the horn. No one came. The streets were empty, the storm howling so loud that even her own screams felt distant. I just kept praying, saying, God, please not like this. Not in my car, not alone. And then, I saw somebody walking through the water. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. A dark figure, barefoot, wading through the current, his hair and clothes plastered to his body. She rolled up her window and shouted for him to go away. I was terrified. He looked wild. You could see he wasn't all there, or that's what I thought. But then he started calling out, saying, "Miss, open the door! Open the door!" The man she saw was Kenton Raz Kenny Brown, a familiar face to many in the area. For years he'd been known as the madman who sleeps behind the hardware shop. People saw him talking to himself, wandering barefoot, collecting bottles for recycling. But on that day, Raz Kenny walked straight into the flood to save a woman he had never met. Fighting the current, he reached her SUV, using a stick to wedge the handle. With one hard pull, the door gave way. Water gushed in. Simone screamed. I thought that was it for me. When the water came in, I was screaming like mad. Then he said, "Miss, me have ya. Stop fight me. Stop fight me." With the rain beating down and the road transformed into a brown, swirling river, Ross Kenny hoisted her onto his back and started wading toward higher ground. He held her legs tight across his chest, head bowed against the wind, moving inch by inch. At one point, the current almost swept them away. He braced against a fallen signpost, gripping it with one hand while holding her with the other. I was sending up my prayers. I said, "Lord, if this is how I'm going, please take me quickly." I couldn't see anything, just water everywhere. I shut my eyes. I felt him stumbling, and I started crying. Then I heard him say, "Open your eyes, miss." When she opened them, they were standing on a narrow strip of road, the only part not yet under water. He lowered her gently, checked that she was breathing properly, then led her by hand to a nearby shelter at a community center. Inside, volunteers stared. The woman in designer heels, drenched and shaking, and the barefoot man everyone knew as Mad, both dripping river water onto the tiled floor. They sat together in silence. A nurse gave her dry clothes and tea, while others urged the man to wash off. When he came back, people stared again, but this time, differently. When him wash off, him never look three bad, you know. I even said to her, "Wait, that's the same man?" I was shocked. Still, I was saying to myself, no way, but somehow, he just kept sitting near. The night wore on. The lights went out around 9 p.m., and all they had were candles and the sound of the wind shaking the zinc roof. Simone admits she was scared, not just of the storm, but of being in a shelter for the first time in her life. I'm not proud of it, but I was nervous. But somehow, when he was beside me, I didn't feel so afraid. He kept saying, "Melissa can't tech we tonight. God nah sleep." As Hurricane Melissa's winds reached over 160 miles per hour across Jamaica's south coast, volunteers at the shelter said Ras Kenny stayed up all night, walking around, checking on people. He held the door shut when the hinges started to creak, helped mop up rainwater, and comforted children crying in the dark. Every time you look, he was helping somebody. He might talk funny sometimes, but that night, him was the most level-headed man in here. By dawn, the worst had passed. The flood receded, and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. Outside, cars were overturned and trees were uprooted, but inside the shelter, calm. Simone was sitting quietly, watching Ras Kenny hand out cups of tea. He never once asked me for anything. Just smiled. I said, "How you know to come save me?" And him said, "Me just hear one voice tell me fee go down the road." Later that week, as rescue crews cleared debris, Simone returned to find him in the same spot near the hardware store. She brought him lunch and a clean shirt. He smiled and said, "Me glad fi see you, Miss Miracle." That name stuck. Now, 2 weeks after the storm, Simone and Kenny are almost inseparable. She's helping him apply for an ID card, and he started working part-time with a cleanup crew organized by her company. When asked if she believes this is love, Simone laughed. The same kind of laugh you only hear from someone who's seen both heaven and hell in the same day. Honestly, maybe him was an angel that just needed a bath. Hurricane Melissa might have washed us both clean. And perhaps that's the lesson from this storm, that sometimes love doesn't arrive in fine clothes or smooth words. Sometimes it walks barefoot through floodwater, carrying you to safety when no one else would. From tragedy to tenderness, from madness to mercy. This is the fictional story of The Madman Who Saved Me, from Romance Ecstasy Channel, where even after Melissa's fury, the island's greatest force remains love itself.